When I inherited my grandfather's $900,000 boatyard, I quietly moved it into a trust, just in case. Last week, my brother showed up with our mother, grinning. We had the title signed into my name. You're out by Friday. I just smiled and said, "You really think I'd let that happen?" 2 days later, they returned with contractors and froze when they saw who was standing on the dock, holding the file. They say the quiet ones are the most dangerous. I never believed that until now. My name is Eric Hammond. I'm 32 years old, and I live in Port Orchard, Washington. I've spent most of my adult life as a civil engineer, the kind of guy who minds his own business, shows up early, gets the job done, and doesn't make waves. In my family, I was always the calm one, the good one, the one who didn't push back. That all changed 2 weeks ago when my grandfather passed away. It was sudden, heart failure, the coroner said. 1 minute he was pouring himself a cup of coffee, the next minute, gone. He was 87, old, sure, but tough. Built boats his whole life, literally. He ran a boatyard down on Sinclair Inlet, restoring classic wood hull boats with the kind of obsessive pride you can't buy or teach. He used to call me down on weekends to help out. I never minded. There was something peaceful about sanding decks with him, talking about nothing, just being there. I'd clean the gutters on the workshop roof, keep the marina's plumbing in shape, patch the dockboards, whatever he needed. Dean, my younger brother, never came around. He was busy chasing the next big thing, mobile apps, cryptocurrencies, AI startups, whatever. Every other month it was some new venture. Every other month, he needed someone to bail him out. And someone always did. Usually Mom. The day of the will reading, I didn't expect much. I figured he'd leave the boatyard to the city, or maybe donate it to some historical society. That's how he always talked. Let the people enjoy it when I'm gone. What I didn't expect, what no one expected, was what actually happened. The lawyer cleared his throat, pulled out a packet, and said plainly, "To my grandson Eric Hammond, I leave my boat restoration yard and all attached waterfront assets, including all equipment, vessels, and the title to parcel number 6447, as well as the remaining estate valued at approximately $900,000. Dead silence. I didn't look at Dean. I didn't look at anyone. I just stared at the paper in my hands. "Is that it?" my mother asked. Her voice was tight, cold. "There are minor disbursements to friends and community partners," the lawyer replied, flipping through the folder. "But yes, that's the core of the will." Dean made a noise like a laugh, but it didn't sound right. More like a scoff. Mom didn't say anything else. Just stood there with her hands folded in front of her, lips pressed together, eyes unreadable. It wasn't sadness I saw on her face. It wasn't grief. It was something worse. Resentment. Like something had been stolen from her. I knew right then. They were going to come for it. I felt my stomach tighten. I'd never fought my family before. I was always the one keeping the peace. But this wasn't about peace anymore. It was about protecting what mattered, what he left behind, and I wasn't going to let them take it from me. The next morning, I skipped work, called in a personal day, drove down to the marina, and just stood there for a while, hands in my pockets, wind off the bay hitting my face. The place looked the same as it always did. The workshop still smelled like salt and sawdust. The old trawler with the cracked keel still sat on the dry dock, waiting for someone to carry again. I didn't waste time. By 10 a.m., I was on the phone with a maritime law firm out of Tacoma. I told them I wanted to put everything into a private maritime trust, not just the land, but every bolt, buoy, and breaker box. I wanted it airtight. By noon, I had a video call with Claire, a senior partner who specialized in high-value waterfront properties. She was calm, sharp, and didn't blink when I laid out the situation. "My family thinks I'm naive," I said. "They're going to try to take this place from me." She nodded like she'd seen it 100 times. "Then we make it impossible." We spent the next 2 weeks quietly locking it all down. The deed was transferred from my name into a trust registered under a shell holding company. Utilities were rerouted. The marina's insurance policy was restructured under corporate coverage with sealed beneficiary designations. No documents had my name in public view, only in sealed management records. I was the sole trustee and manager. No one could touch it without triggering multiple legal firewalls. I didn't tell anyone, not my cousins, not my girlfriend, not even my closest friends. Dean, meanwhile, was making noise. He posted a photo on Instagram with a marina backdrop, not our marina, but close enough that people might think it was. The caption read, "Big things brewing on the waterfront. Restoration revival coming soon. #legacy builds." Legacy builds? I nearly laughed. He followed it up a few days later with a tweet. "Can't wait to bring my grandfather's vision into the future. Family first. Always." That one made me pause, because that's when I knew he thought I'd done nothing. He thought the place was still in my name, unprotected, ripe for the taking. I could see the wheels turning. I knew Dean. He was persuasive, reckless, and dangerously optimistic. He wouldn't stop at social hints. He was building a story, laying a foundation for when he made his move. So I stayed quiet. Let them think I was asleep at the wheel. The more they underestimated me, the better. I wasn't planning on fighting back. I was planning on making sure they never got close enough to land a punch. It was a Tuesday when they showed up. I was down at the boatyard, tightening the bulkhead clamps on an old Chris Craft hull, when I heard the sound of tires crunching gravel. I looked up and saw Dean's silver BMW pull into the lot, followed closely by a rental van. The passenger door opened, and out stepped my mother, heels clicking on the uneven pavement like she was walking into a boardroom. Then came a third guy, some contractor type in a vest and sunglasses, carrying a presentation tube under one arm. I wiped my hands on a rag and waited. "Eric," Dean called. "Way too cheerful. Big debt." He strode up like he owned the place, all fake swagger and cologne. Mom followed behind him, calm but smug, her lips pressed into that forced smile I'd seen too many times. The contractor set up a tripod near the dock and started unrolling blueprints on the hood of Dean's car. Dean clapped his hands once, like he was giving a TED Talk. "So, here's the plan. We're gutting the south dock, adding 2 modern slips, repaving the entry lane, and turning the workshop into a hybrid co-working space/marine lounge. Upscale vibes, but still pays homage to the legacy. Very authentic heritage meets innovation." I didn't say anything. He turned to me. "You don't have to worry about the title. I had it fixed." That made me raise my eyebrows. "Fixed?" I asked. "Yeah," he said casually, pulling a thick folder from his bag. "You know how grandpas will use the old parcel designation? Turns out it created a gray area. I filed a correction and got the transfer processed under the right terms. Long story short, the title's in my name now." I stared at him. "You forged a title correction?" I asked, not even trying to hide the disbelief. Dean grinned like it was cute. "It's not forging if the original will was flawed. I'm just correcting an oversight." My mother stepped forward. "Eric, let's be realistic. This place shouldn't be one person's burden. Dean has the vision to make it grow. This is about the family's future." That was when the property investigator pulled in. Claire had set it up in advance. A licensed investigator from the state's Marine Property Office. He stepped out of his vehicle holding a thin folder. "Afternoon," he said. "Eric Hammond." I nodded. "I'm here regarding a disputed title filing on parcel number 6447. A Dean Hammond submitted documents using a non-current dockyard seal and an outdated parcel map. The seal's been retired since 2009. This," he held up a copy of Dean's document, "is not valid." Dean's face went red. My mother blinked like someone had slapped her. I stepped forward. "The property is owned by the Sinclair Harbor Maritime Trust," I said calmly. "There's no public title in my name. Any transfer would have to go through the trust's sealed records." The investigator nodded. "Which means this filing is not only void, it's under review for fraud." Dean tried to speak, but nothing came out. My mother's expression changed. Not to shame, not to guilt, but to something colder. I just looked at both of them. "You came here thinking you were walking into a power shift," I said quietly. "But the game ended before you even got here." A week passed. No calls, no texts, just silence. I should have known that meant they were regrouping. The envelope arrived by courier, thick ivory paper with an embossed legal watermark and the kind of law firm name that screams overpriced. Dunbridge and Wells LLP. I opened it at the boatyard, sitting on the edge of a rusted trailer axle with Claire on speakerphone. Inside was a formal letter, 4 pages long, from a senior partner representing the emotional and familial interests of Mrs. Deborah Hammond, my mother. Claire whistled low through the phone. She lawyered up. "Oh yeah," I said, flipping the page. The letter claimed that my mother had suffered significant emotional distress and reputational harm due to being excluded from her late father's legacy. It demanded $150,000 in liquid assets as a reparation for emotional hardship, partial ownership of the Sinclair Harbor Maritime Trust, including voting rights, a monthly stipend to acknowledge generational oversight and preserve family dignity. I stared at the words. Familial loyalty is not optional when legacy is shared. Claire didn't say anything for a moment. Then she muttered, "They're trying to guilt you into giving her an equity stake." I exhaled slowly. "It's a ransom letter, Claire." "Yes," she said. A manipulative, civil-worded shakedown disguised as maternal grievance. It shook me more than I wanted to admit. Not the money. I could fight that. But the way she used legacy like a weapon. Like I had betrayed her by honoring the man who gave me everything. I still remembered how I used to fix her sink when Dean forgot. How I drove her to her biopsy appointment 2 years ago and waited 6 hours in that hospital hallway. None of that mattered now. "You ready to go nuclear?" Claire asked. I looked out across the water. The sun was low, casting a pale gold shimmer on the inlet. It felt quiet, but I wasn't. "Yeah," I said. "Do it." Claire drafted a response letter that same day. It was calm, clean, brutal. She challenged the legitimacy of the emotional damages claim, demanded they withdraw the request or face a counterclaim for civil harassment, and formally requested that all further communication be directed through legal counsel. Then she started digging. It didn't take long. The firm representing my mother, Dunbridge and Wells, had a history of inheritance cases with suspicious outcomes. Claire pulled old filings, probate irregularities, sealed settlements involving elderly clients who mysteriously changed wills at the last minute. And she found something else. The contractor Dean brought to the boatyard? He'd worked with Dunbridge before, on another corrected estate transfer that had ended in a quiet payout. One where the original heir mysteriously disappeared from the trust. It wasn't just desperate family games anymore. It was a pattern. "We're not dealing with amateurs," Claire said. "They've done this before." That night, I sat at the end of the dock, the same one where I used to drink coffee with Grandpa before opening the shop. The same place where he once told me, "Don't ever let charm steal your compass. People like Dean get by on momentum. But you? You build things that last." I looked at the letter again. My mother had turned grief into a ledger. Dean had turned legacy into a brand. And now they wanted me to play along, pay the fee, share the stage, smile for the family photo. But I wasn't playing their game. This time, I was writing the rules. 2 days later, I found a note on the marina gate. It was folded once and stuck under the latch like an afterthought, scrawled on a torn page of a leather-bound planner. Just 5 words, written in Dean's handwriting. "Don't forget whose family." No signature, no return number. Just that, a threat wrapped in sentiment. I scanned it, logged the timestamp, and dropped it in a folder labeled Harassment Family. Claire had advised me to document everything. No more casual confrontations. No more giving the benefit of the doubt. I wasn't reacting anymore. I was building a case. That afternoon, I drove to a cafe 2 towns over, a neutral spot where no one would recognize me. I opened my laptop, pulled up Dean's public social profiles, and began screen-grabbing every post, every vague hint about legacy investments, upcoming restorations, and coastal development partnerships, all of them peppered with photos that looked awfully similar to my boatyard. I started connecting dots. Turns out Dean had just landed a job, boutique yacht investment firm based out of Seattle. Real high-end, high-ethics branding. I dug into their website and found his bio, Dean Hammond, legacy builder with a vision for marine innovation and deep roots in regional coastal heritage. That part made me laugh out loud. But this wasn't about humiliation. This was about leverage. I spent the next 48 hours compiling everything. A detailed portfolio with screenshots of Dean's forged title transfer, statements from the investigator who confirmed it was based on an outdated dock seal, social media posts implying ownership of a property he never had access to, the name of the contractor tied to the fraudulent filing, and finally, a timeline of his deceptive business branding, using the boatyard as implied leverage in his new job. I emailed the whole package to Claire. "This isn't a family feud anymore," I told her. "It's a professional liability. Let's hit him where it actually hurts." She agreed. "We'll prepare a formal ethics complaint to his employer. Anonymous but thorough. If they're worth anything, they'll do an internal audit." We were halfway through drafting the letter when I got a call from my cousin Laura. Laura was one of the only relatives I still talked to. She lived down in Olympia and mostly stayed out of the drama, but her voice was tight when she spoke. "Eric, I don't want to stir things, but you need to know something. Your mom's been telling people bad stuff about you." I waited. "She's saying you manipulated Grandpa at the end, that you pressured him to rewrite the will, that you isolated him from the rest of the family." I felt my pulse in my neck. "She said that?" I asked, quietly. "She's called 3 of our aunts already. I've seen the texts. It's not just gossip. She's painting a whole narrative." I didn't speak. I just nodded to myself, jaw clenched. "Eric," Laura added, "I don't believe her, but people are starting to wonder." I hung up the phone, opened a new file on my desktop, and named it counter-narrative. Then I copied over every photo, voicemail, notarized document, and scanned legal notice from the past month. If they wanted a war, they could have it. But this time, I wouldn't be defending myself. I'd be dismantling theirs, one calculated move at a time. 3 nights after Laura called, we met up at a diner off Highway 16. It was the kind of place where no one asked questions and the coffee was always burnt. She slid into the booth across from me and didn't bother with small talk. Just pulled out her phone and turned the screen toward me. "Here," she said. It was a screenshot of a group text thread titled Family Chat. I wasn't in it, obviously. My mom had sent a paragraph-long message. No greetings. Just, "It's heartbreaking that Eric manipulated Dad when he was at his most vulnerable. We all know how isolated he became toward the end. I just hope people understand this isn't about money. It's about integrity. Family shouldn't be coerced into silence." I scrolled down. There were a few emojis. One, "We support you." A couple of my aunts chimed in with vague sympathy. No one defended me. Not one. Then Laura opened her voice memos. "This was from Sunday," she said, pressing play. My mother's voice came through the speaker, tight and measured. "Eric knows how to look innocent, but he started working Grandpa real early, guilt-tripping him, making him feel like Dean didn't care. It was subtle, classic emotional leverage." I leaned back, jaw tight. I'd been expecting it, but hearing it out loud was different. It hit like a steel pipe to the chest. Claire wasn't surprised. She came over that evening with a portable scanner and a bottle of wine she didn't drink. We sat in my kitchen and pulled everything together. She organized it into a clean, chronological packet. My grandfather's medical records, signed by his primary doctor, noting full cognitive function up until his last appointment. Voicemails from Grandpa, dated weeks before he died, thanking me for checking on the plumbing and making sure this place stay in the family. Screenshots of every time Dean bragged about being too busy to visit. The investigators signed summary confirming the forged title, and Laura's texts, voicemails, and group chat screenshots. Claire drafted a single-page statement to go on top. "This is the truth. I will not engage in gossip. I will respond only with facts." I emailed the packet to 27 relatives. BCC'd. No dramatics. No emotional outbursts. Just the truth. I signed it. Eric Hammond, Trustee, Sinclair Harbor Maritime Trust. The responses came quickly. Some were cold, a few angry, but most were stunned. Cousin Jenny called me in tears. My Uncle Terry, who I hadn't heard from in years, left a voicemail just saying, "I'm sorry, I didn't know." And Laura? She posted publicly, "Sometimes silence protects the wrong people. I'm proud of Eric for speaking the truth." That shifted the tide, because while my mother leaned on sentiment, I leaned on evidence. She told a story. I showed receipts. And just like that, the smear campaign she'd worked so hard to spread started collapsing. I didn't gloat. I didn't clap back. I just turned off my phone, walked out to the dock, and sat under the gray-blue sky, feeling something I hadn't felt in weeks. Stillness. Not victory. Not relief. Just the absence of weight and the quiet promise of momentum. The email went out at 6:12 a.m. on a Tuesday. Subject line: urgent, ethics review required, confidential materials enclosed. It came from a burner account Claire helped me set up. Attached was a 15-page report, neat and methodical, addressed to the managing partners of Dean's firm, Seaforth Yacht Investments. Every page included timestamped evidence: the forged title filing, the fraudulent parcel document, screenshots of Dean using our grandfather's marina and promotional materials, and Claire's legal memo outlining potential liability exposure if his deception wasn't addressed. No emotion, no drama, just professional rot, presented like a case study. By Wednesday afternoon, Dean's name had been scrubbed from their team page. Claire called me that evening, voice flat but satisfied. Their HR team reached out for an internal legal consult, she said. They're taking it seriously. Good, I said, but that wasn't the end of it. The Washington State Real Estate Licensing Board had received a second packet, this one filed under my real name. Claire drafted the complaint, citing ethical violations, document falsification, and attempted fraudulent transfer of titled property. Dean's license, the one he used to leverage side deals and pitch investors, was now officially under review. On Friday, I saw the first crack. Dean posted a black and white photo on Instagram, some filtered lighthouse shot with a caption that read, "When people betray you, don't sink to their level. God sees everything. Hashtag faith, hashtag family first." I didn't respond. Didn't like it. Didn't need to. Saturday morning, my phone rang 3 times. Dean. I let each call go to voicemail. The 4th time, he left a message. His voice wasn't angry anymore. It was quiet, strained. "Eric, just call me back, man. I don't know what you told them, but I'm in trouble here. You didn't have to take it this far, didn't I?" On Monday, Claire forwarded me an official notice from the county recorder's office. Subject: Notice of pending real estate fraud investigation, parcel 6447. It was happening. Formal inquiry, criminal exposure pending. Claire said it plainly. They're not just investigating Dean's fake filing. They're opening a case. If they pursue charges, it could mean fines or even license revocation. That night, I drove out to the harbor. The sun was setting low across the water, the last orange streaks bleeding across the inlet. I walked the length of the dock and looked at the old trawler still resting in dry dock, its hull solid, despite the years. Dean had mocked me once, called me boring, called me small. But the thing about quiet people? We build things slowly, steadily, with structure, not flash. Dean had built his whole identity on borrowed language and borrowed money, and now it was all unraveling, not because I lashed out, but because I documented everything and chose the right time to speak. For the first time in my life, I wasn't the one being maneuvered. I was the one pulling the pin and letting the truth do what it always does: expose everything. 2 months later, the final letter arrived. Cream-colored envelope. Neatly typed return address from my mother's new lawyer. I didn't open it right away. I knew what it was. When I finally did, I sat down at the marina office desk, hands steady, heart strangely quiet. To Eric Hammond. Our client, Mrs. Deborah Hammond, hereby withdraws all current and future claims to the Sinclair Harbor Maritime Trust and all related assets. She requests no further contact. This letter serves as formal cessation of all pending grievances and legal demands. No apology, no explanation, just retreat. Claire scanned the letter, flipped it over like she expected something to be hiding on the back. "That's it," she said. "No settlement proposal, no PR spin." I shook my head. "That is the spin. Quiet surrender." She smiled, not out of joy, but something close to respect. They know they lost. The fraud investigation against Dean was still active. He hadn't been charged yet, but the licensing board had suspended his credentials pending review. His job? Gone. His social posts? Silent. His momentum? Dead in the water. And my mother, the one who once told me I was too careful to ever lead, she had nothing left to leverage. That evening, I walked the marina grounds alone. The old workshop light buzzed faintly above the dock entrance. A gull shrieked somewhere out over the inlet. The air smelled like salt and varnish and cedar, just like it did when I was 10, sitting beside my grandfather as he sharpened a chisel on a whetstone and talked about doing things right, even if nobody notices. I followed the path down to the last dock, the small one at the far end of the yard, the one we always called his quiet place. I sat on the edge of it, feet hanging just above the water. I thought about everything that had happened: the forged documents, the lawyer letters, the lies, the manipulation, and the months I spent unraveling it all with measured silence and stacked receipts. I didn't feel proud. I didn't feel smug. I just felt free. I looked out at the water. The sky was turning that soft shade of lavender blue it only finds right before nightfall. I closed my eyes and imagined Grandpa beside me, thermos in hand, always quiet until the moment called for something. I whispered, just once, like a promise. I kept it safe. The wind shifted. The tide turned. And with no more fights to prepare for, no more truths to defend, I finally let myself breathe. Not to survive, not to prove a point, but just to exist.